welcome to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. I'm your host, Louis Padian. I hope that you're doing well and are enjoying the podcast and the topics we've covered so far. These podcasts are released every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, so be sure to subscribe wherever you are listening to be kept up to date. So today we will be covering something that is quite popular and something that I've wanted to talk about for a while, but it's taken me a bit of time to get around to it just because lots of things going on and life in general. But it's one of those things that I think people often struggle with, and that is knowing who to trust online with certain health information, certain things to look out for people if you might feel that they're maybe not trustworthy or maybe they can be trusted. So I've put together a little list of things to look out for around health and wellness advice for maybe that should help you question whether the person is credible or not. But then also a list of people that I would say are good indicators of that they are people to trust. So we'll jump straight in. The first of the few red flags, which isn't a term I like, but I couldn't think of anything else. First of the few red flags. So mainly social media influencers and self-proclaimed experts. So these are the kind of people that you see who have been on reality TV, people who have got a big following, and they make their living off selling things to people, whether that be clothing deals, whether that be supplement deals, or starting their own app. They might go on their own weight loss journey, for example, and that becomes the main promo for their own coaching. And whilst some of them may share personal experiences, and there's usually a big story behind a lot of this, they often don't have any credentials, and they might just be going for the person with the biggest pay packet. So it doesn't mean that the product or thing, whatever they're selling, isn't something that they believe in, but it just might be the one that's paying them the most to talk about it. I've seen this a lot with keto products. I've seen this a lot with amino acid products, weight loss pills, all these different types of things. And just their financial persuasion may have reason for them to be biased in one way or another, and that's something to be aware of. And a really, really good phrase that I read while I was researching this is that entertainment doesn't equate to expertise. And I think that's really, really good to remember across all the boards, because social media is really about entertainment now. It's not just about being sociable with one another. People often just go there to be entertained, and often people are entertained by something that is massively controversial, people who tell really good stories, people who say are very animated, and they might all be the things that these people are, but it doesn't mean that they're credible when they're giving health, fitness, weight loss or wellness advice. So definitely something to be aware of around people who are influencers or just claim to be experts themselves. Next up, and this is one that's quite hot at the moment, and this is people who have completely unrelated qualifications but use them to try and get some credibility. I often see this with people who have got PhDs, who call themselves doctor, and then their PhDs in a completely different topic, and they tend to try and speak with authority around nutrition and diet, and do sound really convincing. And I'm not going to say that people should know better, because it is really hard to tell the difference between people who are trustworthy and aren't online, because it's a very filtered version of reality, and people may struggle to separate that person from what they're seeing online from the actual information that they're giving out. So just because someone excels in one field doesn't mean that they qualify to give out health advice. Simple as that. Just because someone's a professional athlete doesn't really know how they got themselves there, or how you or other people can get to where you want to be. So a common one that I see is around bodybuilders. So the biggest one at the moment, who's grown phenomenally online, and he's obviously working very hard, but a lot of stuff he's putting out is complete and utter nonsense rubbish around nutrition and training, is Eddie Abu. If you don't know who he is, you've probably seen him. He's very animated, aggressive. He's an ex-Mr. Olympia, I think. He's an ex-professional bodybuilder. He promotes or pushes a really high-fat diet, calls all different types of food shit. He's been down supermarket aisles picking up perfectly healthy and reasonable foods and pointing at them and calling them shit. And he's just a character. He's a caricature of a real person. He doesn't really know what he's talking about when it comes to nutrition, but just because he's in quote-unquote good shape because of his bodybuilding days, which we know is most likely to be, or I can assume would be through some form of enhanced supplements, he people trust him for advice. He's also a former psychiatric nurse, which worries me because the language that he uses around food, the tone he takes, isn't very empathetic, and we know could be very detrimental to people who suffer from mental health issues with regards to food. People who suffer with poor body image or disordered eating or eating disorders could be really, really negatively impacted by the way that he speaks around this. There's a lot of shame and guilt around it. There's not a lot of empathy, and yeah, I think he's an absolute clown at the end of the day. So definitely someone who I feel that uses qualification. He mentions he's a psychiatric nurse all the time and quotes that has nothing to do with nutrition. It's not nutrition, it's not dietetics, but yeah, he will use that to talk about nutrition. Next up, we've got people like Jason Fung, Michael Mosley, who are doctors in medicine, who have studied medicine, and who have both coincidentally become obsessed with fasting and sugar. You'll know Michael Mosley if you're from the UK, and maybe even further afield, because he has his fasting books. He does all these health programs where he spouts lots of misinformation, cherry picks data. But his background, actually, before he was in medicine, he was an investment banker, and then suddenly went to medicine and was going to look at psychiatry, I think, and suddenly started speaking on nutrition. Again, in medicine, if you're not aware of this, people who are studying to be doctors, I think during the whole time that they're studying to be a doctor, they might even do just a couple of hours of nutrition. And I know it's become more and more prominent. I was actually speaking to a doctor at the weekend who is really, really passionate about lifestyle medicine. So when she heard that I was a health coach in the NHS, nutritionist and personal trainer, we got talking around coaching methods and how lifestyle medicine is the way forward, which it definitely is. Which all the stuff that I'm talking about right now around looking at health holistically, improving people's activity, managing their stress, all those brilliant things, but we just put it under a different label where we might call it lifestyle medicine, with sort of doctors becoming more aware of it and being able to give advice around it. Anyway, so yes, Michael Mosley, Jason Fung, both obsessed with fasting being the magic cure, sugar being the magic, avoiding sugar being the magic cure, oversimplifying very complex issues around obesity and talking a lot of nonsense on the way. Another one that probably has died off a bit now was Liver King. He had some formal qualifications. I think he studied biochemistry at university, again, because he was ridiculously jacked and lied about taking anabolic steroids for years. He got quite a lot of respect online for his dietary approach of eating raw organs such as liver. Again, completely ridiculous practice. None of the health claims were backed up. But he was, again, very convincing because of the way he looks. While we're on that, two more that are really prominent. First of all, Tim Spector. You might recognise him. He's involved with Zoe, continued blood glucose monitoring and sort of gut health stuff. He, again, he's a geneticist in epidemiology, which sort of looks at the role of genetics in health and disease. Whilst it's really useful to look at that, again, that's not nutrition. That is not physical activity. You might be able to look at trends, and that's what they would look at. Massive cohorts of people over long periods of time and look at confounding factors, factors that they have in common. So that's how we get stuff like people who have more fruit and veg on average tend to have better health outcomes and things like that, just by looking at large populations and trends over time. But his background, epidemiology and genetics, and then also a rheumatologist, which is looking at inflammatory diseases. Both of those, not nutrition. If you've ever heard him speak about nutrition, he jumps from one trend to another. He ridiculously said a claim on the podcast the other day that people are better off drinking a can of Coke than orange juice, which is completely ridiculous. But for some reason, he has some credibility, and it's just such a shame to see that Marks and Spencer's have taken him on board, that his whole spiel around gut health, which is such a new and emerging field that we don't know a huge amount about, he has taken that and run with it and speaks confidently on it, which makes people think that he has authority. And again, I think he's misleading a lot of people. Last but not least, the Glucose Goddess. This was another one who featured on Stephen Bartlett's podcast, which is hugely problematic podcast in my opinion. I used to be a big fan, but again, there's lots of reasons why, which have to do with people that he has on. She has a undergraduate in mathematics, which has nothing to do with nutrition, and then master's in biochemistry. Again, not nutrition. Close, but wouldn't say anywhere near close enough to be out giving the advice that she gives out. Again, speaks really confidently, pulls out statistics, but with no sort of references or evidence to support them. And yeah, is another person that's doing a lot more damage and harm to people because of the information they give out. So all those people who I myself potentially had looked into in the past, and people potentially have their books and have practiced their dietary approaches, have no qualifications in nutrition, but yet give out a huge amount of nutrition advice to large audiences, which is really worrying. So again, if they have unrelated qualifications, if someone's there giving out information, check their qualifications, what they've got. Even if you're a personal trainer, you're not qualified to give out nutrition advice. Even if you're a nutritionist like I am, you are not qualified to give out meal plans. So if a PT or someone else is giving meal plans out, that's unethical. They haven't got the qualifications to be prescribing foods to people, and they shouldn't be doing so, and that is outside their scope of practice. So yeah, just lots of things wrong with this industry, unfortunately, and that's one of them: unregulated or unrelated qualifications. Next on the list, ways to spot it or red flags you look out for: controversial claims with no evidence. So people, especially the people I've just spoke about above, they make these really sensational claims. They make these really simplistic and massive claims. And there's been other people on Stephen Bartlett's podcast that he's taking little snippets off, and it's like, if you do X, you will raise your testosterone by 400%. If you fast, we have shown that it reduces cancer by X amount. And they don't provide any evidence for these things. They usually just provide anecdotes, personal opinions, instead of scientific evidence. And I know people who listen to this don't really care about the scientific evidence, but that's really important to backing up the claims, because otherwise people can just say what they want without any ramifications. People who are trustworthy, and if you're unsure, message me if you're not too sure, and I can check up on people's qualifications and have a look at the sources that they cite. But people who have nothing to hide will usually make a claim, go from this paper, and they will give you the reference to that paper, which I know a lot of people don't know how to read scientific literature, spend a lot of time doing it. So again, if you're not too sure, send it me and I can always have a look to see if it backs up what they say. But that's because they have nothing to hide. They say, this paper found this. I'm going to give you the tools to be able to find that information for yourself. And like myself and other people online who are in the health sphere, who have qualifications and have read scientific literature, we will check those sources to check if that agrees with what people are saying. And that is hugely important. So they, like I said, people usually rely on stories. They will tell you of this hero's journey where they were really struggling, or this person was really struggling and they didn't know what to do, and they tried all the usual ways that people do it, the stuff that actually works, that we all know works. So for example, if we're talking about dieting, that so-and-so had tried calorie counting before and just gained weight until they found this, and it might be this supplement, it might be this dietary sort of practice, it might be this different way of living, it might be fasting, and it completely changed. So that hero's arc and that one thing, and the one thing is that that person is promoting it. It's that dietary approach, it's that supplement, it's that misinformation that we see, and it's all about you buying story. And we love stories. Humans love stories, and we really buy into them. So it's really hard for people to take a step back and go, actually, does that align with what most people say, with what we sort of know, what science really suggests? So stories, they oversimplify very complex things despite evidence to the contrary. So Michael Mosley, Jason Fung, when we talk about sugar, they will just say sugar raises your insulin. Insulin is a fat storage hormone, therefore increases, you will get fat if you eat more sugar, oversimplifying a very, very complex system. And then actually there's lots of evidence to support that that doesn't happen. So again, it doesn't really align with what we usually think, what we'd usually say. Like I said, they don't cite literature, and like this is the kicker, they often have an expensive solution to this made up problem. We see this with Tim Spector talking about his personalized nutrition, making sugar the enemy. And that's why we all need continuous blood glucose monitors. He happens to sell them, would you believe that? So creates this problem, makes people worried, scared by this made up problem, and then sells a solution off the back of it that is usually marked up and completely unnecessary. So being aware of that, being able to spot that when someone's talking about something, and they might not do it all the time, because often on social media people post to warm you up. They want to get engagement, they want to get likes, they want to get followers, all these types of things, because when they do eventually push their product, they've got an engaged audience, their content's being pushed more then, so they can't do that all the time because people won't engage with it all the time. Last but not least is trend chasers and referral codes. This links into a lot of the points that I've mentioned before, but it's a bit separate. People who jump from one trend to another, it's so hot on social media at the moment, this affiliate marketing, that people are trying to flog you discount treadmills, and then on the next video trying to flog you some lion's mane mushroom. Again, it's just affiliate marketing. They will just promote anything that they're going to make money off, whether it works or not, whether they know what they're talking about or not. but pushing mainly quick fixes, promote products through affiliate links for their own personal gain. So be hugely cautious around that. Referral codes, affiliate codes, just use my link below to get to this website. All those types of things can be quite murky, but often shows that the person probably isn't as honest or credible as they think they are. So now we've covered some red flags. Let's have a look at some green flags, we should say, or people who are probably worth trusting. So when it comes to nutrition, because I've got nutrition, I've got fitness, and I've got general health and wellbeing, sort of split into three categories. Nutrition, registered dietitians, people who are registered with the British Dietetic Association in the UK, or a dietitian, their title means slightly different things in different countries, but within the UK, BDA, people who have done their undergraduate, potentially a master's in dietetics, and are held to account by that clinical board. So if they're giving out misinformation, if they are saying controversial things that are potentially doing harm to people, the board has the right to question them, to potentially take away their qualifications, their accreditation. So that's why we have these qualifications or these accreditations, is that it holds people to account. So we know that people aren't going there doing harmful things. Alongside that, I myself, a nutritionist. Nutritionist isn't a protected term, so anyone can call themselves a nutritionist. So congratulations, if you listen to this, you can call yourself a nutritionist. How we get around that is we have our own governing body called the Association for Nutrition, which is the AFN. I am a registered associate of the Association for Nutrition, so that, again, similar to the BDA, that board will hold me to account. People can go to that board and question things that AFN nutritionists are saying, but there's lots of other qualifications out there. I've got friends who aren't part of the AFN who I completely trust, so that's why I'm saying that, not saying that this process is foolproof. I've got friends who are amazing nutritionists who aren't with the AFN, and then there's also people who I know who are with the AFN who I probably wouldn't recommend. And that's the way with most qualifications, most practices, that there will be the odd one or the people who defy the rule. But on the whole, the BDA and the AFN ensures that it's most likely that you're working with someone who's credible, who knows what they're talking about, who isn't going to try and sell you unnecessary things, and has a good core values and ethics in their practice. So that's nutrition, just the AFN, BDA, British Dietetic Association. Those are pretty good markers for people. Oh, and as I've said there, the AFN, nutritionist as a term isn't protected in the UK, but dietitian is, so not anyone can call themselves a dietitian. So if someone's calling themselves a dietitian, then they're legit. If someone's called a nutritionist, I'll probably dig a bit deeper and see if they're doing what qualifications they've got to call themselves that. And then you can find the source of that and see if you agree. In regards to fitness advice, it's fitness instructors and personal trainers in the UK, which are regulated qualifications again. Are they worth the paper they're written on? A lot of the time, a lot of stuff in my personal training qualification wasn't great. There are people out there with PT qualifications who give out terrible advice, but again, it's people who've done certain courses and qualifications that gives them a bit more knowledge and expertise in that area. But yeah, so if you're looking at an influencer, doesn't have any qualifications, they might do some reading, and fair play, there's some really good, more digestible research out there now, or resources for people to get really, really clued up on their strength conditioning and their personal training, their fitness and strength stuff. But it doesn't necessarily hold the same amount as, it doesn't mean that they will be able to get insurance as easy, or if at all, to work with people. With that, something that I've got here in my notes is strength conditioning qualifications. Very, very good in the UK. If somebody is part of the UK Strength Conditioning Association, I think it's called, strength conditioning coach, again, that's probably more credible than PT qualification in a lot of sense. So keep your eyes out for that. If someone is a strength conditioning coach and has qualifications to go with that, then they're probably more likely to be trustworthy than not. Last but not least is general health advice. So this is where we might say general healthcare professionals. So people who work within the NHS or private healthcare are probably best sources for that. Myself, I'm a health coach. I work within the NHS. Health advice is a bit loose because personal trainers can give out generalised health advice. Nutritionists can give out generalised health advice as well. So it's all of these areas combined, but within that I'd put health coaches or your GPs, doctors, who will have some good ideas around general health and wellbeing activities and lifestyle improvements. If people don't hold any of those qualifications, I'd probably be a bit more skeptical than if they held one or two or quite a few of them, just because there might not be the credibility, there might not be the knowledge, the expertise there that you would like to think. As convincing as people can be, these things can just be a nice few things to tick off. See if they've got any of the things to be wary of around unrelated qualifications, and them really trying to lean into those. If they've got referral codes and affiliate links everywhere, if they have rose to fame through some social media influence, or they call themselves an expert in an area, if they're making really controversial claims, then it might be worth steering clear. But like I said, if people are working in healthcare in general, who are working with people and helping them get healthier each day by making lifestyle changes, if they have a PT qualification or strength conditioning qualification, then that can be really useful for the fitness side of things and physical activity side of things. And if someone is registered with the AFN or British Dietetic Association, again, I think there's a sporting nutrition qualification that's just, I realise I haven't made notes on, but again, that can be really useful as well. So people with those qualifications are probably more likely to be trusted and giving out correct information than those in the former category. So there you have it. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. If you have any questions, queries, or would like to reach out to me, please do. I am at Louis Padian Nutrition, which is at LOUISPADIAN Nutrition on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and all other social media platforms. If you're looking for support in achieving your goals and living a healthier, happier, and more balanced life in the process, click the link below and inquire about working with me. Remember to subscribe to the Balanced Approach podcast wherever you're listening for more insightful episodes, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.